Hey guys, thanks for tuning into today's video. So what I have here is a build I just completed. It is the Luke Empire Strikes Back stunt. Now, this is a stunt that went through many variations throughout the film, but this one specifically is the Bespin Stunt. But we'll go over some of the details just because even during Bespin, there's certain things that were different that they swapped over. But I just want to come out and say right now that if it wasn't for Thomas Domonti, I believe his name is, at TLD on the RPF, none of this would have been made possible. The amount of hours and effort he puts in researching these props is outstanding. All the information that I got from this prop was from his Luke/Vader shared stunt RPF thread. So I take no credit in any of the findings on this prop, but I built it based on his information, and he definitely gave me some info. I reached out and asked him certain questions on this variation of prop, and he was very kind, very down-to-earth dude, and he'd help anybody out. So just getting it out of the way, if it wasn't for Thomas, none of this, or many of the props wouldn't have been able to be built accurately. So just thanks, Thomas, for all your hard work in the prop community. So with that being said, so this stunt started out on ESB and Hoth. Now, I believe on Thomas's thread, he calls it the Norway saber, and that's where this saber started. I believe key features of that is it has actually silver grips on the T-tracks, and it was then translated into the Hoth Wampa Cave scene. That saber turned into the Wampa Cave, and you guys all know that from the scene where Luke pulls it from the snow using the Force. That's where this came from, essentially, a version of it. And it has the beer tab, the thin knurled red button, the thick knurled red button. It doesn't have the core bolts yet in the Wampa scene. It does have, I believe, because I needed to fit a blade on the hilt for when he slashes the Wampa monster's arm off. And so they need to affix a stunt blade just for that quick motion. It didn't have any of these core bolts in it at the time. And then obviously it had no gaffer tape on the clamp. It had the circuit board. A lot of people run the Otis board in that with a thick trace. And it had the T-track with the grip screws in place on the T-track. So that's where it was in, or how it was in on Hoth for the stunt. It's a very well-known hilt just because of that scene. And so progression-wise, it started from Hoth to Bespin to Dagobah, just for reference for filming. That way you know where this prop was in terms of the looks and the features. Okay, so in Wampa, obviously I just went over the features on that. So now we go to Bespin. Now in Bespin, there is pictures of this prop, and this is a version of the Bespin stunt. And the cutouts for the screws. And it was essentially the Hoth saber. And what they then did was they had, they drilled, it looks like they drilled the core bolts, but there was aluminum, or I'm going to assume it was HVAC tape. For some reason, they put that around the bolts here, it looks like. So they could have been trying to hide the bolts for some reason. And then it had, obviously, you know, the clamp with the circuit board and the T-track grips in that state. Now, from there, during production, that's when you start to see the core bolts. When you see the core bolts, you also see they put the gaffer tape around the T-track grips first. So they wrap the gaffer tape around the T-track grips at first for comfort, I'm going to assume. And then the clamp was still exposed. There was nothing around the clamp yet. So they gaffer taped around the T-track grips and the clamp was still bare. Then it seems they put the gaffer tape on the clamp, removed the T-track, and added these foam grips as well. That's the version that I did. It has the foam grips with the gaffer tape around the clamp, and then obviously the features of the core bolts and the buttons, and yes. So then in Dagobah, where they last filmed, there's clear photos of the core bolts, and they still had the foam grips during some of the filming, and the I believe the gaffer tape was still on. I believe they started using this as it is here from Bespin, but then you can see that they removed the gaffer tape around the clamp, and they added not screwed T-tracks, but what we see today on the DV6, the A New Hope style angled grips. So that way, you can definitely tell that they removed the foam and added the T-track, removed the gaffer tape, and etc. So it's said to believe that this hill throughout ESB as a stunt, it ended in Dagobah, and then in Return of the Jedi, from Dagobah's stunt, that's when they built the DV6 off of, because it has the same grip alignment, and there are certain features making it very similar to the DV6, if not the DV6, as well as the core bolts. And then they added obviously a shroud. They removed the clamp, added a band. There's a ball catch back here, and they, like I said, they paint the tip, put a shroud on, and it still has the they removed the bottom foamer stamping, flipped it, added a plate, and so on. So that is how we know. And then also on the D-ring, it has the chrome Kabold on the DV6. So that's a little backstory, kind of choppy backstory, as I'm just going off the dome on this. So that's how this stunt progresses through Empire, long story short. So let's go over the build list on this prop that I did. So it started as a Roman Props Gen 2 Blem. Now I reached out to Roman just because it's, a little bit more expensive for his regular graphics, and I'm going to be turning it into Swiss cheese with the bolts and whatnot. So I didn't really care about condition, and there was barely any making it a Blem or his battle worn version. There's like a little mark on the sidebar and a little lip on the bottom, a little raised edge, nothing severe. Like everything covers it. So I wasn't worried about using a Blem just to do this prop. And then with the Blem, I swapped out for his Roman's thin red button, making it more accurate. And I got my own gaffer's tape and foam grips. We'll go over the grips in a moment. And the Kabold, D-ring, and rivets are from Wonawanga, as well as these larger M6 bolts and the core that is in place. And then the upper bolts I got from Thomas Del Monte. I reached out to him to see what he thinks is the right size, and he told me publicly and privately that the right size is M3 bolts that are countersunk to match the M6 countersunk bolts that are up top. So that is the build list and where I got the parts. Now let's go over the features here. So let's start off at the top. So as you can see here, the clamp band was removed from the front. So I just popped the rivet out because there's a band that goes from the ears together. Pop that out to match the prop, as well as I kept the bunny ears rivet out of it, which on the Romans is a screw. So you have to unscrew it. And then the band, the ears are pinched towards the back and more of an opening to accommodate the stunt blade as well as the core in there. So, and then you have the Wonawanga core in place, which is a metal plate, and then the core is below, aligning the core bolts. So yeah, like I said, this has the beer tab intact on this stunt, as well as I have the Roman's beautiful thin knurled red button, and it's a great option. All these parts are a great option for those who don't want to spend quite a bit on a vintage. in my case, I wanted to start out on a replica and maybe build my way up building a vintage. But stepping down from the thin road red button, like I said, I have these core bolts in place, the M3 threaded to this metal section of the core up top, drilled and tapped. And then there's no photos that I have seen where the slider tab is still intact. Now, when I was installing the core, trying to slide it up, the rivet and tab on the inside of the slider tab was getting bound up by the core. So I decided to remove it. I did put it back on in the wrong orientation on accident, which is okay, because I really didn't want to keep it on anyway. So I removed the slider tab, and the DB6 currently does not have the slider tab, and there was no evidence showing that when they made these modifications that it was still there. So I decided to just keep it removed because I don't, it's so hit miss and cut and dry. But since I did the core, I don't believe they put it back on just because of fitment wise. So that's why I have it off. And then, yeah, so I use the 101 template to drill the correct orientation for these core bolts as well as the tops. The top bolts I did. So these are, like I said, M3 and then M6 drilled and then countersunk. So these are flush on the flash like the prop. You can see that. And then stepping down from the upper, I put gaffer's tape on the clamp like this variation of prop had. And you can see it kind of extend a little bit past the clamp in reference material, because I'm sure it wasn't, you know, they didn't do it really clean. They just wrapped it. And then you can see here as I also clamped around the bottom, so none of the aluminum was showing. And then just for reference, I did not put a circuit board in the clamp because it was covered anyway. Then this lever is a late foamer larger rivet lever, but it was going to be covered anyway, so I didn't mind having it wrapped, and you know, because you won't be able to tell anyway. And now these atrocious ugly grips, guys. Oh my goodness. So it was kind of a task to do these grips, I'm not gonna lie. I got the foam and razor knife and tried to match the width of the grips based on reference of the flash parts when it was being held in ESB. So this grip here I reference is just about in line with the bunny ears, a little bit off, as you can see there. So I referenced that grip. And then this grip here, you could see a clear photo of that, which it was peeled back because it got loose. So I did that as well. And then you can see it kind of, you can see the spacing in between these two grips here wasn't much, and it made its way towards the centering of the clamp. So that's why that grip is like that. And then there was I just kind of referenced these grips in terms of the spacing because I noticed a big space in between this grip going here that was tore or ripped off kind of, and in relation to this grip. And then the one with the, and you can kind of see a glimpse here because it's turned like this on the photo. So it is pretty tight with the other grip because you can't see any of the glare of the bottom. So I put them pretty tight together between here. And then this grip, I just rolled with it just in terms of where I should put it because there's no actual photo. And I space these out kind of with a big space, that way this would have the same gap as the prop did. So I just, most of it was trial and error and trying to get them correct. But as we know by the photos, these grips got moved around so much, so it's very hard to get an accurate placement of the grips because they're fell off, they're moved. You can see glue residue as I tried to replicate, being very messy with putting these grips on. Now these are all on purpose, so don't think that I don't know how to put grips on. I made them some long, some short. You can see this one here with aligned with the bunny ears is actually a little longer. And then this one, you can't see the bottom on the picture. So I just made it a little longer as well. And then that one's a little short, a little long. So, and then they're tied up against the clamp, but then it's wrapped around with the gaffer tape. So that's a little reference for you guys for grip placement. Doing the best I could on that. And then going to the bottom, like I said, this is the Wanawanga Kobold rivets. You can see where the edge right here covers the M, and then is just butted kind of up against that lip. So I reference that. It's E6000. I flush cut the rivets, and E6000 I'm on the Kobold, and E6000 the Kobold on the bottom, and the grips are obviously E6000. Tape is tape, and everything else is screwed. So literally, but yeah, I just want to do a good overview of this prop. I was really excited to complete it. It was definitely on the build list when I wanted to, one that I really wanted to do, because not many people do this stunt. I've seen a gentleman did the Dagobah stunt, which is similar, but it doesn't have the foam grips or the gaffer tape. So this is definitely an ugly hilt that I wanted to replicate. And, you know, maybe one day I will find vintage parts after doing these builds and do it on a vintage, which would be awesome. But if anyone's curious, this is for sale. If anyone would, you can reach out to me on Strikeback Props on Instagram, send me a message, and yeah, and we can go from there. But this is for sale. Just to fund the other project, I currently am finishing a Dave P. Obi A New Hope hero, which is, this version I'm doing is Chronicles style, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'm putting a lot of work into it. I bought it as the clean version, so I'm doing all the weathering and all the modifications needed for that hill. So definitely stay tuned for that. But currently, the props I build, I'm building to sell, just to get some practice and some knowledge on it. And I would like to start doing some builds for others that reach out, but I'm just making a name for myself right now, building these props, showing people my work, and then we can just go from there and see how it rolls out. So I'm pretty excited for that. But yeah, like I said, thanks for stopping into today's video, guys. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this very ugly saber, as I try to make it ugly in a good way. But yeah, stay tuned for more projects to come, guys, and take care.